Hello, hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today, either on the live stream or watching it on YouTube or LinkedIn. This is our third discussion as part of Travel Tech's Future Travel Narrative series. This one is about the story Algorithmic Adventures, written by Maura Ryan and illustrated with a beautiful illustration by Kat O'Neill. I'm Joshua Ryan-Saha. I'm the director for Travel Tech, based at the Edinburgh Futures Institute, which is part of the University of Edinburgh. And today I am joined by Barry Pickard. Barry, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi Josh. Thanks for having me. Basically, I'm the owner of Tailor-Made Itineraries. So I create bespoke self-guided tours for independent travelers. I also work with a number of other travel companies designing tours for them. Some really interesting ones. For example, designing tours in San Francisco that incorporate robo taxis, the automated cars that are appearing now in the US and China. And then also designing tours which are delivered by AI characters. So, for example, I was doing one James Bond themed tour, and it's delivered by Miss Moneypenny on an app on your phone. So, really interesting things like that. Another company I work with delivers road trips through your sat nav in the car. So, a good variety of things, a lot of kind of tech related things. I'm not a techie at all, but I'm having to kind of integrate myself into that. And AI is one of those kind of things I'm having to get into.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Barry. And I couldn't have wanted someone with more perfect expertise for this conversation because although, like you said, you're not a techie, I think when it comes to itineraries and AI, it's actually the human and design features that we're going to have to think about more. And I think in the story that we've been able to produce, Algorithmic Adventures, most of the questions are actually about those features. And I think someone like yourself who has designed and is deep in the design of these itineraries is perfect. But for those of you who have read the story, I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't, what I tend to do in these sessions is to do a very quick summary of the story, looking at my notes. Before that, I just want to explain the origin of it. So Algorithmic Adventures was actually one of our first ever of the future travel narratives. So it came from the end of 2020, 2021. We were really still grappling with the pandemic. And it was our first in-person event for the Travel Tech cluster in Scotland. And we had about 50 people turn up. So people were keen. We had it was a hybrid event, which was, that was the future back then. And it was 2 years before ChatGPT. So, this, I think, was quite a prescient group who came up with this narrative. So let's get into the story. It's called Algorithmic Adventures. And what it does is it is based in Thailand, in Bangkok. And it is a Scottish family called the McDonalds. And it starts outside a market with the mum and dad, who are sort of on the edge of retirement, and they've gone to Bangkok to meet their daughter who's travelled there. The family are sort of a family that love to travel and are sort of globetrotters. But the main part of the story is essentially that their itinerary has been planned for them by an AI tool, something that we in the travel tech world now seem as very reasonable, but back then, like I said, was much more scientific, sci-fi, I guess. And the daughter comes and joins them, and it's a bit of a reunion. They haven't seen each other for a year, and the AI then prompts them to get moving. They've had their greetings long enough, and as they get moving, they realize that the sun is shining. It had been raining previously, and they ponder whether the AI tool had already predicted that was going to happen, and that was the best time to move on. It also pondered whether the AI tool had realized that their conversation had hit a lull and moved us on. So hopefully it won't happen to us today, Barry. The other aspect then is it goes into details of the preferences. The mum, she is a particular fan of culture, museums, artifacts. The dad is a foodie and he wants to try the different tastes and he reads about it. And the daughter is, she wants to do some wild trekking, experiencing, going off the beaten track. There's a really lovely quote which I think which describes it, which is that the AI understands the individual, but it negotiates on part of a collective. And I think we've all had that experience when we're traveling, wanting to do something but having to negotiate collectively. So, giving an AI that task is an interesting component. A couple of other features of the AI tool in the story is that it seamlessly translates. Again, another huge leap just in the last couple of years. And also it can quality control the guides and people that they interact with. There's a way of being able to know the ones that are good and the ones that perhaps aren't. But at the end, the story ends by saying, actually, some of the moments that really created the best experience were the ones that perhaps were unplanned, unforeseen by the algorithm. Instead, what they were the spontaneous appearance of a beautiful rainbow just where they were tempted to be. But perhaps it was the algorithm at work. So that's the story. And I think it's, first of all, just to quickly show the illustration again, Barry, for your benefit and everyone at home. This is Kat O'Neill. She's a wonderful Edinburgh-based illustrator. And this is one of my favorites. And as you can see, there's the dad, there's the mum, and then the daughter peering through these sort of tie binoculars of the different preferences they have. And yeah, it's one of my favorite pictures. I've actually got it as my screen background. So Barry, what were your initial responses to this story and to that lovely illustration we've just seen?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think you summed up most of the points out of that story, which is great. I think for me, you've got a typical family there. You've got mum and dad and daughter who like different types of things. How do you kind of come up with something that's going to please everyone? And for the AI tool to make everybody happy, everybody's willing to kind of follow it. I think that's great. That's where we want to, just in general, that's where we want to go with travel, whether it's AI driven or human driven or whatever. That's what we want. I think as well, I get the impression, kind of reading between the lines, that a lot of pressure has been removed. So maybe in past holiday trips, there's been a little bit of friction, maybe, I don't know, between what people want to do. So, the AI, the AI is kind of like an independent referee, if you like. It's helping come up with something that everybody's going to buy into. And so, yeah, that pressure is removed. You can go and enjoy your trip without worrying about something, you're going to do something you don't like or whatever. So, I thought that was great. The thing about timekeeping and maybe the thing about does it know the weather? I think that's fantastic. If that can be done by AI, and that's a question mark, then I think that would be an amazing tool if it can do that. I mean, we certainly in Scotland, we can't predict the weather from 1 hour to the next. So how AI is going to do it, I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. So yeah, I enjoyed the story.
It's a really nice one. It's a really nice one. I think, it feels quite recognizable. I mean, I'm in a relatively large family, and I remember having to trade off what we want. What I really like about what you said is about removing the pressure. And I think in the context of this story, and often some of the best moments of travel is where you are visiting a relative or an old friend. I used to live abroad, and it was great when people come to see them. And what you actually kind of want to do is spend time with the people. In fact, I used to always say, when I saw my friends who come out to travel to see me, I'd have a better time with them there because we spent all that time in sort of real quality together. So getting rid of some of that pressure to create those spaces for genuine personal interaction feels like a really nice thing. But I have a follow-up question, which is, like, your role is creating, designing, and structuring itineraries. And although this vision of the future, which is feeling fairly realistic, is one that does it almost automatically. What do you do as a professional who works in the sort of design of itineraries? What makes a good itinerary?
I mean, first things first is the client's preferences. You know, what do they want to do? What kind of things do they like? And then kind of building that in. You know, not necessarily everything that you're going to do on that trip is going to be exactly your preference. You know, there might be one or two other things, but it's kind of building that tour that you know the client's going to enjoy. I mean, I do it through giving a travel questionnaire up front. You know, there's various, three pages of pertinent questions to ask. Some of them don't need to be answered, but some are, and then that leads to follow-up questions. And then with that kind of information, then that's when I kind of do what I do. I think the other important thing is logistics. So it's not just about going to see this museum, going to see that gallery. It's how you're going to get there. What's the timing? When are these things open? That kind of thing. So I think, anybody can look at TripAdvisor and see the top 10 things to do, but it's actually weaving that together into an efficient and just a tour that you're going to enjoy. You're not necessarily rushing. You're not going to miss something. So that's a key element as well, and I guess flexibility that can be a bit difficult to build into a tour, but giving options, or at least giving enough information that they can make their own decisions. So from my point of view as a travel designer, that's the important bit.
This is such an interesting response. So what I picked up from what you said is questions. And so you provide a questionnaire because you have an understanding of the types of things that will give you an insight into what make a good trip. And I do wonder whether, if you're using AI tools, perhaps, do you have that skill set sometimes to question yourself or your family in the right way to actually know what you want? Because often you think you know what you want and then it changes based on mood or surprise and delight. So questions, logistics, which will definitely come on to in the next question. It was funny you mentioned in your answer to your previous question about weather. And I think, we all got stories about weather prediction. Interestingly, Google DeepMind has come up with the best model now for weather prediction, but whether that's genuinely accessible to these AI tools to use on a day-to-day basis is unknown yet. And then the final thing, which I think is also going to be really interesting in the next question, is agency. You mentioned flexibility, but the way you termed it was almost saying, well, allowing people to make that choice.
Yes.
And that often requires an element of dialogue. Now, you can definitely have dialogue with these AI tools, but that's just an interesting component. So I guess thinking about the right questions, the right data access for things like logistics and agency and all that, what are you seeing when you're working with these technology companies or when you're playing around with ChatGPT or Google Gemini or whatever? What do you see in terms of a technology world that you think makes this future in this story plausible? And do you think the future's already here? Is this story already realizable?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's been a couple of false dawns when it comes to this kind of technology, for planning trips. I know maybe 4 or 5 years ago there was a rash of apps which purported to plan your trip for you. Looking at them, and of course this was before proper AI technology like ChatGPT. Looking at those apps at that time, they just didn't work. They came up with great places to go, but they never connected it properly. So I'm pretty sure I haven't looked, but I'm sure all those apps have now been dead and buried. Yeah. So I don't know. Is it happening? Is it possible now? I would say maybe.
Good hedging.
It's difficult to say. I think the potential is definitely there. I know there's one or two companies, like say, TripAdvisor, Lonely Planet, all the kind of big kind of travel companies or that you hear about. I think they're all putting time and effort into coming up with their own AI technology, trip planning kind of apps and whatever. So yeah, we're probably not quite there yet, but we're getting there. But I haven't seen anything that could do the job that was in that story. Not yet, anyway. So.
What do you think are the gaps? Where do you think the sort of AI or technology tools struggle with or will struggle with the most? Is it things like unexpected events, logistics? Is it more fundamental?
Yeah. So I think, well, kind of stepping back a little bit, I always think, trip planning, travel planning, it's a bit like doing a jigsaw, right? So you get this box of jigsaw pieces, and guess what? There's some pieces missing. There's some pieces that don't really fit together. But the trip plan to be successful is coming up with the best picture that you can make with those jigsaw pieces, and that's the same for a human planner or for an AI planner. So it's how do you tackle that? Because I start designing a tour and it's like, oh yeah, really need to put them to this place and they'll love this bit. And oh, but guess what? That place is closed on a Monday and that
Mm,
place is only open on a Monday. How are you going to, kind of design that? So that's a difficulty for me or for AI planning. Um, I think specifically the problems for AI, certainly right at this moment, would be like what they call hallucinations.
mhm, mhm,
Um, I'm pretty sure hallucinations will be managed out of the system over the coming years. Uh, Certainly over this past year or so, there's been big advances in
mm,
getting
mm,
rid of hallucinations. So by hallucinations, I mean the AI just makes things up. Um, so I remember when ChatGPT came out. Um, Someone said to me, "Oh, I've got this great tour of San Francisco, and it's going to go to these 10 places." And I'm like, "Oh, right, okay, let's have a look at it." Now, two or three of those places weren't actually real; they weren't a thing. The AI had just hallucinated them. Now, that's going to get work. They're going to work those gremlins out of the system, but it is still a significant issue at this moment in time.
mm,
So that's the main problem at this moment. But moving forward, that's not going to be a problem. I think sort of logistics again. How is AI going to deal with logistics? How is it going to get you from one place to another? It's easy enough to say, here's the museums and galleries that you should go to, but how are you going to get them there? You need access to opening times. You need to know distances, and not just distances. How easy is it to get across those distances? Do you need to hop on the underground? Do you need a bus, a taxi, or can you just walk it? So the AI, it is tackling those issues at the moment, I
mm,
think. I don't think it's tackling it to exactly where it needs to be at this moment in time, but again, I think they're moving in the right way.
mm,
Um, I think just in general as well with AI, ChatGPT, that kind of thing, it's only as good as the questions you ask, you know. So again, I'm not sure how these AI tools are going to, plan your trip for you, but obviously you're going to have some input into that. Now, if they're not asking you the right questions, or if you're not giving them the right answers, there's going to be a bit of an issue there. So, for example, maybe half of the trips I plan with my clients will say, right, I want to do X, Y, and Z. These are my preferences. And I'll be like, okay, that's fine. I'll then look into, what they're going to do. But then guess what? As they realize what the trip might involve, maybe it's going to be
mm,
too intense doing everything they want. Then the trip kind of evolves and normally changes. So is AI going to be able to do that? Not at this moment in time, but again, maybe in the future. how's AI going to pace things? That's an interesting question. Everybody, I mean, when I do my own trips, I like to see as much as possible in a short space of time, make it as efficient as possible. But people, most people don't like that kind of trip that I like, you know. So how are you going to build that into AI? I think that'll take a little bit of time as well.
Yeah.
And can it deal with deadlines? I don't know. I mean, one example I quite often hear is, if you've got a ferry to catch, is it going to keep you to that deadline to catch that ferry? And if you don't catch that ferry, or something happens, that means that you can't catch that ferry, what's your alternatives? Can you get the next one, or was that the last ferry for the night? So it's there's a lot of ifs and buts at the moment, but that still applies to the human plan trip as well. So I'm not saying it's just an AI problem. That's my kind of problem as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many nuances, and I think again, just picking up on some of the things you've said, the hallucination challenge. I remember I was off to Paris last year, and it was just everyone was playing with ChatGPT. I was like, I want to get souvenirs. Show me some places using this is a bit of a test, and a lot of the places didn't exist or they'd closed because its data was quite old. Now the data that's going through ChatGPT and Google Gemini and some of these other tools is much more up to date, so it's better. But if you construct that question wrong, you can prompt it to come up with something that isn't true. So at the moment, still, that's not there. I think what's interesting to me about you said about questions as well is it almost makes me think about how do you design interfaces for this AI tool. So in the story, it's almost like it's kind of passive and listening and responding, which requires a lot of knowledge about you, and you've allowed it to interrupt you at particular moments. So designing those interactions feels like how to do that in a way that feels seamless, not interrupting a good moment. But they're really interesting components. And then I think the final couple of things is almost just it's about data quality almost. So when you think about logistics or opening times, now in some of the cities, you go to London or whatever, Glasgow, you probably expect that most of the businesses on there will have good Google data about when they open, when they close. It's a competitive field. They've got to constantly make sure it's up to date, got to make sure they're discoverable, and they've got it on Google. They've got it on other places as well. And that's not true everywhere. It's just not, I've been to so many places where it's not open. It said it was open. It's not open. The other thing
sorry, not only that as well. I was in India last year and touring Rajasthan and whatnot. Most of the places I visited don't have websites.
Yes.
Right? You can't find information about these places on the internet. And of course, your AI in that is just looking at information on the internet and aggregating it and then coming up with a plan or whatever. If that information is not on the web, the AI is lost. So there is that as well. So
and for me, that this is where it's sort of leading us perhaps into, which is this idea of how does an AI tool work with human expertise together for idea generation, and also. Yeah, you can imagine a terrible situation where Itineraries been spun up saying, "Oh, I was here this one particular time, maybe from some forum. There's this great shop," and then that keeps on getting pushed forward, and it's just not there anymore. It's not open, and it's a nuanced thing, and especially, and it's I was probably coming at it with a very, I don't know, Western European or just European American view of it. There are places that just are not digital, but for many reasons. The only thing I was going to say as well is about pacing and emotion. And we're doing this workshop in Lisbon with hotel providers, and one of the cards about future AI tools was almost like recognizing emotional state. Now that'd be interesting. But I imagine if you're taking someone on an itinerary, you need to sort of check it, especially tour guides need to see how's the energy, that sort of thing. That's a
Yeah,
difficult. Maybe they've
yeah.
got wearables. I don't know.
Well, this is I mean, that's the difficulty for me doing self-guided tours. I'm
Yeah.
obviously sat here in front of my computer, but most of my clients are return clients. So, and most of them are very free. With giving me feedback. Normally positive, but sometimes negative. But I take that and it's like, okay, that works. That's what they like. And then the next trip, I sort of build that in. Maybe they want certain information in their itinerary that other people don't need. And, so it's maybe not the emotions I'm getting, but I certainly get feedback and can improve on things as well. So.
Yeah. So I guess there's sort of two questions as well, which are linked to um, what we've said before, and but go back to the heart of the story, which is one which is about personalization
Mhm.
versus group dynamics. The second being serendipity and surprise. So when you're building an itinerary, how do you navigate those two things? How do you create space for that? It's like you said about pacing, for that moment of magic that is unscripted. And how do you balance the preferences? Do you get everyone to fill out the form, or do you
Yeah.
have to trust the one person who represents the family?
I mean, the form is normally, given to one person and then comes back, but, I've done itineraries where, I mean, I'm working on one at the moment. It's a family itinerary, mum and dad, 18-year-old son, 16-year-old daughter. They're doing a 3 center holiday in the US. Now, there's going to be points in the itinerary where, you know, um, dad and son are going to the US Intrepid in New York. They like their planes, they like their navy, whatever. But mum and daughter, they're going to the Museum of Modern Art. And then they're meeting up for lunch.
Mm,
Once they've finished. So I've got the flexibility as a planner to do that and to say, right, you're going to do this and you're going to do that.
mm,
I don't think at the moment these AI tools have that kind of flexibility. Um, whether it can come, I'm not sure, but yeah. So you've got that kind of personalization. Like I say, the travel questionnaire and then the follow up questions, and then again, if they're repeat clients, I get that information. It's locked up in here, and I'm
mm,
able to design a tour. I mean, I think that will come with AI as well. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to look at my notes because, like I say, I'm not a techie. But I believe there's things like sovereign identity, which the tech industry is working on,
mm,
Web5 decentralized data, that
yeah.
kind of thing, where people perhaps will have digital wallets on their phone where they have their preferences. I mean, certainly one company that I'm working with, they have like the food preferences, so
Mm,
what type of food do you like, Chinese, Indian, French, Italian, tick all that apply kind of thing. Are you a vegan, vegetarian? Have you got allergies, that kind of stuff? All that information is put into this personalized wallet, which no
mm,
one else has got access to, but you know so that I can see that being you know a really important part of the future.
yeah.
And that's going to solve a lot of issues for AI trip planners, kind of moving forward. If everybody's got this kind of personal identity, that can be shared with a trip planner or a hotel or whatever.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, and that's so interesting. I'm so glad you mentioned that because that feels like it gets right to the heart of this particular story. Because if you
mhm.
think about this story, essentially what they've got is some unknown device. Maybe it's a phone, maybe it's something different. But what they've been able to do is almost have this as something that is geared towards them. It knows them instinctively. And so how do you make that happen? And what you just started talking about, I think, is one way that would enable it, which is essentially allowing for your preferences. Maybe that is collecting all the data on all the stuff you've ever bought. Maybe it's all of what you've searched for on the internet when you're traveling. Maybe it is your directed information, stuff that you've said in there. And maybe all three of them have their own individual wallets. Maybe they've joined them together for this particular session, this holiday, and connected it to maybe Visit Thailand or the equivalent DMO, who never access the data, but they can work with it using their database of knowledge and expertise. That wallet can also access maybe this Google DeepMind weather data. Maybe they're wearing the wearables that are giving them real-time information about heart rate, tiredness. Maybe one of them has an illness. And you can start. I mean, this gets complex, right? And I don't think this is why this story is sci-fi, not real now. Because a lot of the sort of the bits you can do with AI, you can kind of do. You can predict the weather pretty well. You can build an itinerary based on group preferences pretty well in terms of the basics. But when it all comes together and you're in the moment and it's responding to changes and needs, and then that's the hard bit, right? That's where we're not yet at. But, and this is an important question, who do you think are the potential winners and losers in this future? So if, say, this future is around in 5-6 years, potentially it will be. AI is going so fast.
Yeah.
How will you be using it? Will you still have a job? I hope so.
Well, start off with potential winners and losers. I mean, you could have a situation where your well-known travel brands, whether it be TripAdvisor or whatever, they just consolidate their position. They come up with an AI tool, and they just get better at what they're doing. But you could also have the likes of Google, Apple, kind of coming in above them. Because, at the end of the day, you've got Google Maps. That is the world's best, most used AI travel technology,
Oh, yeah.
It's fantastic. I mean, I use it, obviously when I'm planning. So, are the likes of traditionally non-travel or thought of as non-travel businesses like Google going to just come in and squash the the competition, if you like, in the travel industry? I'm not sure. That's an interesting one for people who work in the industry, I guess.
Yeah. Google Maps
I don't know. Yeah, and I also wonder. I mean, obviously, like over tourism, that's a big thing in the news at the moment. Venice is talking about having a tax on people coming into that kind of thing. I just worry slightly that an AI travel planner will say, we'll have you going to the top 5 things in a city because that's what everybody talks about on the internet. That's what everybody rates as their top 5 things on the internet, and that's what the AI is looking at. Is it going to space out enough of the tourists? Is it going to be detailed enough to know? Well, actually, this person would prefer this lesser known museum or art gallery than the main one, the Louvre or whatever. So yeah, is there going to be an issue with over tourism if everybody's funneling down onto St. Mark's Square in Venice? I don't know. It's possible. As for myself, is there a future for the kind of services I provide? I would like to think so, because I think what you're going to get with AI travel planners is they're going to, either now or in the future, they're going to have a good product. It's going to tick most of your boxes. It's going to give, it's going to design your trip, and it's going to be a 7 out of 10. Great. And it's maybe going to be free. It's certainly going to be a lot cheaper than my services. However, are you wanting a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10 trip? I would like to think I can provide that, just because, I really delve into the personalization. I work with repeat clients. I've been, to most of these places. I have done these trips myself. AI hasn't. So I think there'll always be a niche for someone who's willing to pay a little bit extra, but to get that better experience than AI. But at the end of the day, most people don't use my services. Most people don't use the services of a tour guide, in a city, you know. Um, so, but and so these people might just go the AI route, and that's fine. But I think there'll be enough people out there that just want that little bit extra, So
Yeah, and
hopefully, fingers crossed.
yeah, well, I think you're probably right. There's at the moment there's two aspects that I think two. If I'm summarising the conversation, there's two gaps at the moment from this increasingly amazing reality of AI in the world of itinerary building and the future envisaged in the story. Now we can talk about data access and so on, but curation is a key part, which is actually providing validated expertise, be that about logistics or just about, you know what, I think you want something different here. You're picking up on things that aren't captured in the data sources. And I think one of those, it goes back to how do you formulate those questions and how do you understand the place. So, if I just put into ChatGPT now, take me to Venice, what do I do? It will just be, that's it, it will just be the top 5 things. Now, is that good for Venice? Probably not. Is it good for me? Probably not. Instead, what could we do to really help move people to experience more, to act responsibly, but also to have those unique moments? And that's why I think your services at Tailor-Made Itineraries are going to be particularly useful. Now, we have come to an end, but there was a few things I wanted to just mention before we go. I mean, when Barry, you said something right at the start. We saw a massive load of companies set up in this space, and when ChatGPT first launched, it was the first thing I saw in all the Google notifications that I had. Another company set up AI itineraries, and I was quite skeptical, partially because I think it was too easy to do. So I wasn't sure how one or two big companies could be set up in this space. But more recently, I'm more open to it. I've seen some really interesting AI first companies. Layla is an interesting company to look at. Okay. They've just acquired another company called Roam Around. And it's not just itineraries, it's more the whole planning process. Now, I was really impressed playing around with it this weekend. Another Scottish company, really good one, called Obflow. Now, it's less specific itineraries. It's not all about the connective tissue, but they do really provide interesting, validated things to do that you can choose and move around as you go ahead. So I definitely recommend checking out Obflow. And the other thing is probably what I'm seeing with some DMOs who are building their own GPTs, their own chat functionality that's trained on their own experience, mainly maybe even their own busyness levels. So I think that's really interesting. But before we go, Barry, is there anything that you can tell our viewers or listeners to how to get in touch with you, or to how they can potentially carry on this conversation with you, or maybe they want to go on a wonderful holiday?
Sure. Well, best bet is to go to my website, tailormadeItineraries.com. But I'm on Instagram as Tailor-Made Itineraries, Facebook as well. Those are the best places to see me, I think. If in Instagram, it's more kind of travel inspiration, if you like, my own travels, and show you kind of, if I can do this for myself, I can do this for you, kind of thing.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, Tailor-Made Itineraries. You'll find, just Google it, you'll find me.
Well, great. We'll make sure to put a link into the notes and things like that. But no, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. I think this is going to be a topic that we'll have to come back to, and we'll see. AI is changing so quickly. So thanks so much for your time, Barry. Great conversation, and thank you so much for everyone who joined. And look forward to our chat next week, which will be on our 4th story yet to be revealed. So thanks very much. Take care.
Thank you.